Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Wedel, and I'm the mayor of the city of Walnut Creek. On behalf of the City Council, I want to welcome you to this special Memorial Day observance. We will begin with the presentation of the colors by the Pleasant Hill Army recruiting team and playing of the national anthem by the Walnut Creek Concert Band, after which the Mayor Pro Tem Silva will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise for the presentation of the colors.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can be seated. Please let me introduce my colleagues up here on the dais. First, we have Mayor Pro Tem Silva and Council Members Luella Haskew and Kevin Wilk. Unfortunately, Council Member Rich Carlston could not be here with us today. We are also pleased that Assembly Member Catherine Baker, Supervisors Karen Mitchoff and Candace Anderson, and BART Director Deborah Allen are here with us today. And also in the front row is Congressman Mark DeSagnier's representative, Megan Crane. We are pleased that Reverend Dwane Michael, formerly of John Muir Medical Center, has joined us for the 15th year and will deliver the invocation, after which I will provide some introductory remarks.
Let us pray. Eternal Spirit, we invite the blessing of this 2018 Memorial Day gathering of the Walnut Creek area community. Bless all the memories of those gathered as we remember those whose courage and selflessness led them to defend their country and be willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. As we remember all veterans in this life and life eternal, may today's observance inspire and solidify our commitment to living out the values of this democracy. We give thanks for all our participants, including our military participants, those who plan and coordinate this event, our speakers, and Walnut Creek Band as their contributions inspire and undergird this Memorial Day. As we remember today and every day, continue to bring comfort and assurance to family and loved ones. Comfort in the face of the pain and loss that may need ongoing healing, and assurance that our loved ones' sacrifices will forever be remembered and honored. Amen.
duty, honor, country. I cannot begin to understand the true meaning of these words, as my life journey has not included the responsibility of following my brothers and sisters into the hallowed fields of war. Like General MacArthur said, I do not possess neither the poetry of imagination nor the brilliance of metaphor to tell you what they truly mean. However, I do know that this country has been blessed. We've been blessed with tens of millions of individuals in the armed forces that have a keen foundational awareness of their true meaning. Individuals that are willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice for their band of brothers, their families, or in service of their country. Those that understand and know the true feeling of having the fear of war wash over them, or have had their ears drowned by the barrage of gunfire, or experienced the witching melody of the far-off drums beating the long roll. Blessed by the ever-loving hand of our Maker, many courageously walk through the valley, thankfully, to return to their families. Yet touched by the never-fading memories of the men and women who served so bravely by their side, all of whom continue to bear the greatest cost of war. Yet far too many served never to return. And so on this, the Day of Days, we gather as a community to remember and honor those who gave the greatest sacrifice to our country. The first observance of what we now call Memorial Day occurred on May 30th, 1868, when flowers were placed on the grave of Union and Confederate soldiers. After World War I, the day changed to honoring all those who died in fighting wars. For 30 years, our city has hosted this special ceremony on Memorial Day to remember and honor those American military professionals from all branches of service in all wars who gave their lives in service of this great country. We welcome those of you that are here today to honor and remember these heroes. It is important that we as a community continue to hold this Memorial Day observance to honor those brave men and women. We can never take for granted their sacrifices made by these special Americans. Next to our Veterans Memorial Plaza, we have plaques honoring those from Walnut Creek who have died in World War I or World War II, the Korean and Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Please take the time to visit these plaques at the end of today's observance. Words cannot express our gratitude for their service. Service that not only provided future generations with the benefit of a greater society, allowing them to live in a world better off because of their sacrifice, but allowing each of us to be here today, enjoying the fruits of the most prosperous and free country in the history of humanity. As such, a thank you, a salute, or even these words cannot adequately express our deepest appreciation for their service and for the many other benefits of having them in our lives. As the shadows of my days approach the light of eternity, I hope that I can look back upon my own life and ascertain that I have lived it. I have lived it with the respect and character that justifies and honors all those that have given their life in sacrifice of our country, and I truly hope that each of you can do the same. On behalf of the City of Walnut Creek, we are appreciative for the service and sacrifice of those individuals that have served our great nation, especially those that have served and cannot be here today because of that service. Those like Tony Pepper, the brother of our keynote speaker, Carrie Pepper, a United States Marine who has been missing in action since April 6, 1968 in Vietnam. Miss Pepper is the author of Missing on Hill 700, a memoir she wrote in remembrance of her brother. In addition to her book, Ms. Pepper has written articles for many periodicals. She currently resides in Sacramento, where she works as an educational consultant, as well as a social media entrepreneur. She's currently working on her second book, Return to Hill 700. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Ms. Carrie Pepper.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. Mayor, thank you so much for that introduction. It's a beautiful day. And I was asked to come here today to share a little bit of my story and my book, Missing on Hill 700. But today is about remembrance, it's about honor, it's about gratitude, and it's about connections. And although the title of my book is Missing on Hill 700, the subtitle is really the real story, and that is how losing a brother in Vietnam created a family in America. And it's all about connections, and now you are all part of my family. So the connections continue. When my brother Tony went missing on April 6th, he was declared missing, and we lived with no answers for in my life for about 40 years. You know, my family didn't talk about it, which many families don't. There was just silence, and so I grew up not knowing what happened. All I had was the military reports, saying that he was killed with no explanation really. So I didn't know what happened, and I was just in the dark. And then one day I received a letter in the mail, and it came as sort of a wake-up call. And it was a letter from a cousin that I had never met, and she wrote to me. And this is what happened. The letter arrived in a large manila envelope, postmarked ND, North Dakota, one of my favorite places we drive through each summer on our yearly pilgrimage to Wyoming to visit grandparents. As I sliced open the envelope, I closed my eyes, envisioning plains, clear and bare, against a bluer than blue sky, ceaseless winds, and shining hills of gold pyrite, fool's gold. I thought of the miners who shouldered and deliriously swung their picks, only to learn it was worthless. But I always came home with my suitcase full of as many nuggets as I could squirrel inside it. The envelope's contents held a precious clue about my brother. I know you don't know me. My name is Bonnie, and I'm your second cousin. She said that Clara, my grandmother, and Otto, her grandfather, had been brother and sister. She was writing a family history and needed some answers. The ancestral chart she sent contained blanks she wanted me to fill in, dates and places, births, deaths, marriages. I wondered about this new relative, and I realized I didn't know much about my family history or my brother and his life in Vietnam. And to quote Pierre Claessens, "To be killed in war is not the worst that can happen. To be lost is not the worst that can happen. To be forgotten is the worst." And I couldn't bear the thought to have my brother forgotten after all that time. And so I started searching. I went to the internet and I started posting messages. Simple things. I didn't really know much about him. I just knew his date of death and his unit. So I posted that, and I said, "Does anybody remember Tony Pepper? Might anyone have known my brother?" And I put a picture up. And I was astounded. I started receiving emails back in fairly quickly, and most of them would come in at 2 or 3 in the morning, when most of these veterans were awake fighting their demons. And they would say things like, "I knew your brother," "I remember Tony," or "I fought in the same unit." And one said, "Let me introduce you to your brother's commanding officer," who just lived just a few miles from me. And so one of the Marine's wives actually contacted me, and her name is Mary Ann, and she said, "My husband has been looking for your brother." She called him Pepper. He's been looking for Pepper for a long time, and she and I corresponded for probably 5 years every day. We were like sisters. And one day she wrote to me and she said, "I want you to know that you can have a memorial stone placed at Arlington National Cemetery for your brother, and finally there can be a place for Tony. And I didn't know this either, so she told me what to do. I just faxed information into the cemetery, the interment division, and within a few weeks, I received a postcard in the mail and with a picture of his memorial stone. And they told us that we could set up a service to come out, a military service to come out and honor him. So I invited the people that I knew, the few that I had been corresponding with, and they all came out. And there were quite a few. They came from Boston and Pennsylvania and as far away as Pocahontas, Arkansas. And so my band of brothers, I knew answers were waiting, yet I had no map. Bonnie's letter was my wake-up call. I had no clue where my journey would lead, but I knew there were others I needed to find. I began with what I knew. I typed Anthony John Pepper, USMC, Vietnam, into Google and hit search. Instantly, databases regurgitated hits, none of which I'd seen before, all with my brother's name. Most gave the basics: date of birth, date of death, hometown. Others had scattered information, POW reports, Purple Heart recipients. I was drawn to Operation Just Cause, a site where a stranger named John had adopted my brother and erected a virtual memorial to Tony's memory. I dearly wanted to talk to John, but we only connected once, a first link in a chain, and for that I am grateful. One line stood out: above all else, these men have the right not to be forgotten by the nation for which they gave their lives. One of the Marines that came was from Massachusetts, Revere, Massachusetts, as he would say in his Boston accent. Eric Smith. He wrote to me before we met at Arlington, and he said, "Carrie, I talked to you on the message board. I didn't know Tony personally in Vietnam, but I was on the Hill on April 6th when your brother was killed, and so all of those guys I won't forget. I was a radio man attached to Gulf Company, but I was with them long enough, January 68 to August 68, to know some things." And since Eric was so special, I asked him if he would please read the St. Crispin's Day speech, "We few, we happy few, we band of brothers." Because of his Boston accent, I just wanted him to read that at Arlington. And so he said he would. And a few days before we met there, he called me up. And he says, "Carrie," he says, "this is Shakespeare. I'm going to have to practice." And he did a wonderful job. And I lost him a few years ago, and I am so sorry that he's gone. He was such a young boy and should have never gone to war. And again, to remember, since today is about remembrance, to quote William Shakespeare, "When he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with the night and pay no worship to the garish sun." So while I've lived my entire lifetime not knowing if my brother Tony will ever be brought home, we've all had our losses, and we've all had our hearts broken. And to quote Rabbi Earl Grolman, "Grief shared is grief diminished." Today is about remembrance. It's about honor. It's about connections. Connections build families. Connections heal. Connections fill gaps. And connections mend hearts. My family is all but gone now. My brother, sister, mother, father, a family brought together. But my extended family, a family brought together while searching for information about my brother Tony, continues to grow. We will be forever connected through our heroes who laid down their lives for our freedom. And to close, this quote from British War Memorial in Burma: "When you go home, tell them of us, and say for your tomorrow, we gave our today." God bless you all. God bless America. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Now it's time to honor you, our veterans. So when you hear your service song, please stand up. Army! The Coast Guard. The Marines. The Air Force. The Navy.
Eternal Spirit, bless all that has been shared here today. We give thanks for the opportunity to remember as a community, for the blessings of the words of our speakers, and for the music that has stirred and reinforced our memories of those who have died. May we continue to be unified in our resolve to not forget the sacrifices made as we continue to share in the resulting legacies of freedom, security, and democracy. Amen.
I'd like to thank the Walnut Creek Concert Band and the musical director, Harvey Bernstein, for the performance and appearance here today, and for the performances at each of our Memorial Day and Veterans Day observances since 1988. We'd also like to thank Reverend Dwane Michael for his invocation and blessing. We're grateful to the Pleasant Hill Army recruiting team for taking time to be part of the special tribute. And I also want to thank the Boy Scouts, Boy Scout Troop number 810 for assisting today. Finally, I'd like to thank city staff for all their work to put on this event. We'd like you to now follow us as we proceed over to the Veterans Memorial Plaza for placing of the wreath, after which we will observe a moment of silence before playing taps and the lowering of the flag to half-staff. Please join us to be part of this ceremony. We are proud of this community's continued dedication to maintaining a solemn spirit on Memorial Day. In honor of the city's 30th annual tribute, we invite you to enjoy some cookies and punch at the conclusions of the ceremony. And finally, thank you for all of you for being here today to honor and remember those that have died in sacrifice of our country. Would the color guard please proceed to retrieve the wreath and lead the procession to Veterans Memorial Plaza.
Order, arms. Right, face. Forward, arms.